But so it should feel like deja vu. I believe most of you guys were there. I know I definitely chatted with Brian last go around.
Yeah, I'm the mainstay. And Vince was also in the band. Adam is still in the band. The new member is Joe on bass, who replaced Seth, who was on the chat with us, but he left the band in January.
Wah, wah. So the episode aired in December, and by January he was like, "Screw this."
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. Well, Joe, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be here.
Hey, great to have you. I like your beard.
Thanks, man. This is
perfect.
It's the quarantine beard and quarantine hair, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. True story, because I was chatting with a guy from Finland who had a beard that went down to his belly button and it was braided in like 6 different places. And I was like, man, how do you do that? And he's like, what do you mean? You just grow it and don't stop growing it. I was like, but during when I was in lockdown and I was laid off, I tried to grow a beard. And by like day 3 or 4, my wife came in like a ninja and was like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? What am I doing? What's going on with your face? What do you mean what's going on with my face? You're not growing a beard, are you? I'm like, what? No, I'm not growing a beard. What are you talking about? By day 6, she's like, that's enough. Stop it.
That sucks. I'm glad I don't have that issue with my girlfriend because I hate shaving. I don't know. I keep it trimmed, but I hate shaving all the way down.
Yeah, like shave. Yeah, that's rough. You get all the,
Well, it's worse for people that don't shave very often. That's why it like when you do shave it all the way down, then it just gets super
irritated.
Yeah,
a razor burn.
It's like there's a terminal threshold for where you can.
He said the thing from the other thing.
Yeah, it's total Ironclad Torment when you try to get the.
Wow.
Yeah, architects of genocide. That's what I would call the people who do the shaving stuff. Groovy, let's rock and roll. Hello, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris. On my right-hand side is usually my right-hand man, Gabriel, but he is in school, or maybe he's out of school. He's not here, but he'll be here in spirit. If he runs in, though, he'll say hi. Which case, I think, if you remember, Brian, you guys probably chatted with Gabriel the last time.
We did.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. He ran in and out of the room.
Sounds like him. He might do that again today. Changes since we last chatted. He's now 6 instead of 5, and he now has a little sister who is 3 months old. So
I heard Curtis told me you had a newborn.
Congrats!
Yeah.
You do.
Congrats.
Thank you, and thanks to Curtis. I didn't know that Curtis knew that, but Curtis, thank you so much.
Whoops!
Whoa! When did I tell Curtis that? Oh, it doesn't matter. Just imagine like a creepy picture of Curtis popping in. Boing. Beautiful. Well, today on the Rock and Roll Podcast, we have, and I'm just curious, is it Last Train or The Last Train? The Last Train.
The Last Train. Yeah.
Okay. It's really embarrassing of me to say that in the middle of the introduction. How do I say, like, what's your name, band name again? No, I know your last. The Last Rain. Just wanted to double check. Is it Last Train or The Last Rain? So today on the Rock and Roll Podcast, we have The Last Rain, and they've got a new album called Evolution, which is released on September 18th. And at the time of recording that, it's in approximately 4 days. When this airs, it will obviously be past tense. But right now, I'm being joined by everybody in the band who is important. And so, boys, Brian, Joe, Vince, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Absolutely great to have you on. Now, last time around, we spent a great deal of time just chatting about chicken wings, and I figured we would probably just resume that conversation. It would be the evolution of our conversation.
I mean, I have evolved because I make my own hot sauce now.
Ooh! Okay.
Yeah.
Gabriel walked in the room. Did you want to join the conversation, kiddo? No? Okay. Now my heart has sank. But you make your own hot sauce, so that kind of brings it back up. Where there once was no horizon on the fallen dark, I now see an hourglass. So let's talk about the genesis of your hot sauce making.
Well, it was something that I always wanted to do, and finally kind of bit the bullet and made one batch of like a jalapeno hot sauce just to kind of dip my toes in a little bit. And then I made a batch with habanero, lime, and fresh honey from my friend's apiary. And it was a hit. I already have like 10 orders of this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it tastes. It's hot, obviously, because it's habanero, but it's got a really solid sweetness to it. And so eventually, once I start getting more and more variations, then I'm gonna like bottle and label them and everything, and kind of try to mass market. But obviously, there's a lot of lines of red tape to do that.
Mm-hmm. I imagine so. You can start small, maybe like at what do you call those things? Those food markets, farmers markets. That's basically where I would start, because I wouldn't be able to sell it like over the internet or anything, because the FCC regulations when it comes to stuff like that is you actually need to use an approved kitchen, and mine obviously won't be, but they actually have places in the area where you can rent a kitchen that is for the day, and then you're essentially certified to sell that product. Yeah. Yeah, something similar here. You need to have a commercial space.
Right.
And it could be your basement. It just has to be physically separate from where, my kids and my dog are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So habanero, lime, and honey from a local apiary, which gets me all on fire because what florality is the honey? What kind of local flowers have his bees been on? So therefore, what does the honey taste like? And then what does that do to the hot sauce?
I mean, my friend that runs the apiary runs a mile a minute when he talks. So like, I've been so overloaded with information about bees that I ever thought I would know. To retain a lot of it is quite difficult. So I do not have an answer to the first question, which was the type of flowers and stuff like that you said that they pollinate, right?
Yeah, because that will change how the honey tastes.
Sure. And but I know as of now he's at about 40,000 honeybees, and a couple different sec homes, I guess, or each thing, and but he has his own big backyard and everything that does have a lot of. He's even talking about planting different plants to be pollinated to get a different taste in the honey. The one that I have used in my hot sauce right now is it's kind of like a very smooth sweetness. Doesn't really have any bitterness to it. It's kind of like a lighter color, and I just think it gives it that kind of. It's not like super potent. You're definitely going to get a lot more of the habanero, but what's really neat about it is you get hit with the sweet right out the gate, and then it's almost like the habanero is kind of takes you off guard because you're not expecting it to be so hot. But it's one of those sauces where like some of the people that bought it from me aren't even heat fiends like I am, but it's one of those sauces that even though it's hot, they keep eating it. And I think it does provide kind of a unique flavor. And that's kind of my idea with all the hot sauces I'm going to do. I'm going to pick a pepper, a tart fruit, like a lime or a grapefruit, and then a unique fruit where like right now my next two test batches are going to be jalapeno, lemon, and kiwi. The next one is going to be scorpion pepper, grapefruit, and dragon fruit. And these two peppers specifically I've grown myself. So I started growing my own peppers too.
You're a renegade.
What?
You're a renegade. You're a rebel. You're growing.
Yeah.
You're saying, and I grew the kiwis myself too. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Right? I wish. I mean,
too far.
When I have a bigger house and backyard, I would like to actually grow all of the ingredients that I'll be putting in my salsas and things like that.
You hear that? Salsas.
Yeah.
That's got plans. Brian's got plans.
I've made a couple salsa batches that people have enjoyed, but not anything particular yet. I haven't reached any of them.
Groovy. Next couple of questions then, because you mentioned hot, sweet, and savory, and I was thinking No Horizon kind of comes in hot.
Yeah, it does. Technically, Fall and Dark and No Horizon were almost written as one song. But No Horizon does start right out the gate with a blast beat build up.
Well, that would make sense because if it's dark, you can't see the horizon. So it's like there isn't one.
Right. Now, I'm not sure if you were aware of this when Curtis filled you in, but the album will be complemented by a book too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that leads me into the immediate next thing of take us through this book / album, I guess, concept, theme, story, what have you. Is it a follow along? Is it complementary to? Take us through it.
So the book is basically complementary to the music, where it just kind of expands the story. So the songs are essentially based on chapters in the book. So it's just kind of a musical representation of what you're reading, obviously in a more limited form. And then so if you read along, obviously the lyrics with the music, you can kind of get a neat idea of how the story plays out, and then you can expand that. It's kind of like the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, which the Lord of the Rings are good, but the extended editions are better. So reading the novel could give you a more whole experience to the album and the music.
I just imagined, I mean, obviously bars aren't open and things, but you'd be like out at a bar somewhere. I know you wouldn't be talking to girls because obviously you're a taken man, but just like, talking to girls at a bar, be like, no, it's like Lord of the Rings, girl. Like, you don't even know. It's like the extended edition. I make hot sauces. You want to hang out?
Hey, chicks dig dudes that can cook.
Oh, that's for sure.
I know.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why my wife dug her claws in and won't let me leave. But cool. Okay, so we've got a chapter per song, so 12 chapters in this book. So there's lyrics, but then there's also these accompanying stories. Is there an accompanying hot sauce also as well? Like, while you're listening to Genesis, I want you to try this jalapeno hot sauce that started it all for me. And then you go into the next one, Evolution of a Decaying Race. Mm-hmm. And you say, this one's got habanero, lime, and honey in it. And we know bees aren't a decaying race. That's why they're evolving or something. Actually, take me into that.
Which part?
Well, Annihilation of the Ancients. For some reason, I thought of the bees because the bees would be the ancients. And
okay.
I don't know. Smoking them is kind of like annihilating them, but it's not really. They're just putting them to sleep. So
right.
You can take their honey from them.
I feel like Ironclad Torment would be probably your last dab sauce. Your
like hot ones.
Yeah, and then Fallen Dark might be kind of like your kind of your cool down period before it's crazy again.
Yeah,
I think Ironclad, you're actually going to be putting a hot sauce in your eyes.
Maybe I'll have to consider that for the next album. A hot sauce accompanying each track on the next album.
Now we got to give them royalties for the idea.
Yeah.
Boom. All right. I only request that there is a fermented hot sauce or one that has a spice compendium, such as ginger, coriander, something like that.
Okay. That's cool. Those are some like root stuff that I haven't really messed with too much other than just regular cooking. But I have seen hot sauces with those ingredients in them. They're usually pretty good.
Mm-hmm. That's right, baby. It's the next evolution in the step of your hot sauce and salsa making. Yeah.
Sure. Those kind of things would probably be a little bit better in salsas. Like one of the main ingredients in the salsa that I did make was a dill. I love dill. And
okay.
Yeah. Heavy on the dill and garlic.
Wow. Okay. Did you pull that out of your driveway too, or the dill?
No, unfortunately not. But dill and garlic are actually relatively easy to grow.
I know it grows in my driveway.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, I haven't done that yet.
All right. Because it's a weed. Anybody out there doesn't know dill is a weed? It's a weed. It grows on the side of the highway, and then people pick it and then charge you money for it. It's kind of funny how the whole thing works.
Right.
And we grew garlic actually last winter, and we bought like 30 different cloves of garlic from a garlic farm and wanted to see which ones took, and all 30 took. So now we have a bathtub full of garlic. We've been giving people garlic.
That's awesome.
How do you use your bathtub? Or do you have two?
we have two bathtubs. So it was, the downstairs bathtub was looking quite autumnal for a little while there.
At least you won't have to worry about vampires.
We will not. My favorite question, though, only one person asked this question. I said, hey, we grew some garlic. Did you want some? And they looked at me and said, well, what does it taste like? And I said, it tastes like garlic.
Here, why don't you take a bite of it like an apple? And see what you think.
Try it out.
There you go.
Cotton candy garlic.
Yeah.
Exactly. Boom.
Nice.
That's an annihilation of the ancients. Okay, so then take us through this storyline as an arc. We have a literal genesis. That's the first track. And then we have, I'm guessing, a really bad ending, but I mean, I'm just saying that because it's a long song. There must be some serious conflict going on in the only 8-minute song.
That's Architects of Genocide you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the last track on the album. It's basically just kind of like summing up the whole story, and because the general gist of the story is the destruction of life by our own means, and then it's a race that's trying to find new life, and they board a shuttle. Actually, I'll let Vince field the rest of this one.
Sure. So it's kind of like almost like a Battlestar Galactica meets Event Horizon. So yeah, the human race is dying. They have all congregated onto a ship. Spoilers for the book, by the way. Sorry, guys.
He can bleep them out.
Yeah, you can selectively edit. So yeah, they are seeking to get into another plane of existence, and everyone is promised to transcend into these energy beings and kind of become ethereal Avengers. Not everybody's buying that. It may not be what it seems, as you can imagine.
Doesn't sound like it at all.
It goes poorly. They bite off a little more than they can chew, and then we need to deal with the consequences of our decisions. If you've actually read Expanse a little bit, or seen the show, there are some elements of that in there, which is interesting to me because the writer of this book had not seen it or read it and came to some of these same plot lines on his own. So it's a mix of a couple distinctly awesome things and turns into its own awesome thing, kind of like a hot sauce made out of multiple ingredients. So the book and the CD, like, they will follow the stories roughly. There is more story than there is album, while like most of the song titles match up with book chapters. There are additional book chapters that just we didn't quite have it in us for a double album, I don't think. But I think it's going to be fun. I think you should grab a copy when it comes out and run through it.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. I mean, that's something that doesn't happen often. Obviously, concept albums are nothing new, and that takes an awful lot of work. But to actually go that extra mile and write a book that potentially, even as it sounds like, has more stories. So maybe there's a foreshadow into what the next album will entail.
Sure.
I don't know.
I can tell you one thing that is for the third album. Even if we decide to revisit Evolution, it will not be on the third album. The third album, I just want it to be like each song separate on its own, very kind of hard, fast, melodic songs, kind of like Chain Heart Machine meets Colony. I heard that they have met each other at one point.
It's been a while.
Pow.
There was a meme that I just saw recently. I don't remember. It was probably on Facebook somewhere like that or whatever. But it was just like a grandma in a walker saying, "In Flames used to make good albums."
Oh wow!
Obviously
Ouch.
making fun of how the legit fans are fucking old.
Yeah, it's not every day you realize that. Oh, geez, Louise. That was Colony was what 20 or 25 years ago.
Yes. It was 98 or 99.
So that would be over. No, 22 years ago.
22 years.
Mm-hmm. Clayman just hit 20, so this had to be before that.
Yeah, Clayman 2000.
I confused it for a second with Clayman, but last time when bands were allowed to tour, In Flames came through, and I sat down with Bjorn, and we actually got on the topic of what fans want him to play versus what he wants to play, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a unique conversation, obviously, but something I also kind of shared with Arch Enemy when they came through, because similar token. How do you span a career over 25 plus years and try new things and try and hold on to fans and whatever else? Because I don't know. I guess some people can write the same album over and over and over again, but it's hard for most people realistically.
Sure. I think there are some bands that are relatively successful with it, that they don't have too many pitfalls in their discography.
I've got a great In Flames set list story. Actually, I probably shouldn't say it's a great story until you hear it. But they came through Niagara Falls on our side a couple of years ago, and back when shows existed, might have been the same tour. And they had Chris Broderick playing guitar.
Same show.
So same one, yeah. So every song, this show started 3 hours late. That thing was a disaster, but once they played, it was good. All the audience wanted was Trigger, over and over and over again, between every song. Trigger, Trigger. He tells them, it's like, well, we don't have Trigger ready for today. And then next song, Trigger, Trigger. And he's like, he learned like 25 songs for us. Trigger was none of them. He's like, next time we come to Buffalo, we'll just come on stage, play 12 times Trigger, and then leave. And it was an experience. So,
oh my god,
the fans want to hear Trigger.
What a crap song too.
I don't mind it, but I don't want to hear it 12 times.
That was funny because I was backstage and I heard that Chris was looming around, but I did not see him. And then after I was finished chatting with Bjorn and I was talking to his tour manager, Chris came around the corner and I was like, oh, this is cool. Find myself here at this random moment in time.
I have a very funny story regarding Chris Broderick. And it's not super long. So I went to see Iced Earth, another In Flames show, and Jag Panzer on tour up in Toronto. And this was when Iced Earth was on their horror show tour. It was just before Reroute, and I believe Mechanized Warfare was the Jag Panzer album. And so I was, after the show, hanging out outside, which is what I would always do, just hang out a couple hours hoping the guys would come out. And Jag Panzer was out, and this is back when Chris Broderick was in the band. And I'm just shooting the shit with the whole band. And eventually we get to taking photos, and I ended up getting a photo with Broderick and Harry Conklin, the singer, holding me upside down by my feet.
I can see that. I can see that happening.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
Now, speaking of other things happening, I see that there is a Kickstarter page for the album release. It looks like you guys are close to your goal. At the time of recording, there's 3 days left to go. I'm always curious about Kickstarters, GoFundMes, that kind of thing, because I know we're old guys. Like 15 years ago, it was like all the rage. Every single band was doing some kind of a please give me money so that I could make, my record sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it kind of seems to have died out, but it seems like it's starting to come back up again, and I'm seeing it a little bit more often.
Well, the thing that I think, what was it, Allegiant did one that they kind of got a bit of flack for, because they basically stated, if you don't fund us, we're not making the album. Now, we're not doing that. Like, we're putting this album out and getting the merch and all that shit anyways. It's just, this is more of a pre-order where it's going to help give us a little money up front. Where I don't appreciate is the route they went, because, well, that means you don't want to make music anymore. Like, you could still make music and not necessarily release it, or just release it digitally and things like that, which don't really cost much. I mean, I know recording costs a lot of money, but when I originally brought up doing a Kickstarter, I had done it once in a different band years ago, and it was a similar conversation then as it was with us. And so I understand both sides of it, especially doing one right now during COVID times, asking for money. I mean, the most people that are donating on it are people that would have bought something anyways. And that's kind of more mostly what our audience was going to be anyways.
Okay. I mean, it seems, what is it? Just around over $3,000 Canadian. Probably works out to be about $3,000 US too, ish.
Our goal was 2,500.
2,500. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that. What does that cover?
And go ahead.
So it's kind of tough because, again, we pre-funded, like we self-funded everything so far. So this is not to reimburse ourselves at all. This is for the next stage of it. So one of the things that I came to really like about the Kickstarter is it kind of lets people vote with their wallet and gives you an idea of who wants what and what quantities before you make any purchases. So the number of shirts we buy will kind of vary on how many people order them, the CDs and that type of thing. So what's next for it? It's going to fund the initial purchases of the merch stuff, which obviously will want quantities beyond just the people that ordered. If we can get into it, I'd like to get into like stage lighting, a little more professional setup there. And then, towards a music video, that type of thing. So kind of the non-music release costs that are associated with releasing an album like this. So that's the hope.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Because I was going to say 2,500. That gets you like one song mixed.
Yeah, well, I know. I know. Go ahead.
I was just going to say if you're doing it through depending on who's mixing your record kind of thing, but yeah, I mean that'll get you just the mixing usually.
We actually do have a notable name who mixed and mastered our album, and I'm going to totally screw up his last name, but it's Mendel Beige Delige, I believe, and he was the guitar player for Aborted for a number of years, and he is now doing solo stuff and doing a lot of engineering on people's music.
So here's a question for you. Maybe I picked your guys' brain on this one last time, but especially with wanting to create the connection between those two, that Soil Work and that In Flames record from the early days. I mean, Freddie's available. He needs the work. Why don't you go chat up Freddie's skirt and ask Mr. Nordstrom if he wants to mix your record, or even when the borders open up, fly over to Gothenburg and hang out in his studio and be inspired by the very guy who engineered that whole sound.
Well, that was actually the plan for a long time to use him. It was going to be $4,500 for him to mix and master and reamp the album. And then when it came time to utilize his talents, there was some not great communication. I don't know if he mentioned at one point he was having issues with his Facebook Messenger, but I'd even emailed and things like that. Just there wasn't a lot of great communication there, and we needed the album to get done. So we ended up going with somebody else, unfortunately. But, however, I did have a conversation with a different friend of mine who was the one that recorded, mixed, and mastered our debut, Expulsion from Paradise. He made a pretty good note that, although, yeah, it would still sound pretty decent just sending the files off to Nordstrom, he did say that you really get the sound by being there, by being with him, by recording with him. And so that he's provided as also a producer and making suggestions on the fly while you're recording. And I totally understood that standpoint. So maybe in the future, if we possibly get some label support or something like that, I would consider it.
Sorry, you just said label support.
Yeah, I know.
It's a true story. Speaking of Kickstarter, I was chatting with a band recently who was on a large label in Europe, and they were coming out with their third album. They had a 2-album deal. They were going to go to renegotiate for at least a third album. And the label, who is a well-known, well-respected label, said, here's €5,000, and if you take it, you can use it to make a third album with us. So they went and they did a Kickstarter, and they walked away with $17,000 US.
Wow.
And they just said, I think we know our direction now.
Huh. That's fair. And you know what? If we had, and all this PR stuff we're doing, we're hoping that just to kind of get a wider reach. I mean, I really just want people to hear the album, you know, and that's the unfortunate thing. It's very difficult to get the outreach, and we did a pretty big PR campaign. We got in a few European magazines that will hopefully help with a bit of that. And like I said, maybe by the next album, if we do a Kickstarter, that we'll get more than just our, you know, parents donating and pledging.
that works. You know, don't be devoid of luminosity on that one.
Yeah,
I was waiting for it. I was like, he's got it ready.
We actually did get one person that is a strict fan from Japan, actually.
Fan from Japan.
Pledged, which was kind of cool. I think there might be one or two others that I'm not familiar, but most of the other ones on there are friends of ours. But that doesn't mean that they still had to spend as much as they did. Like, we have some friend of mine purchased the I Love the 80s package, which allows you, we're going to be doing a 80s melodic death cover EP next year that will involve doing melodic death versions of like new wave and synth wave and rock songs. And so that pledge allows you to not only get like everything that we're offering on the Kickstarter, but also allows you to pick one of those songs.
I picked Fascination Street by The Cure. That's all I picked. I didn't give any money, but I'm just throwing that out there.
There's Cure's a great band.
Yeah,
love The Cure.
Sweet, some Bronski beat. That's always a good one. Yeah. Who are the big boys in the mix there? Speaking of big boys in the mix, Joe. Sup, baby. Tell us about being the new bass player in the band. Are you on the record?
I am not on the record. I joined a little bit too late. But yeah, it's been really good so far. I feel like I've really grown as a bass player already. You know, we have a lot of fun playing at practice and everything. Actually, Brian found me. I was in the market for a computer case on Facebook Marketplace, and he saw a picture of me playing a guitar or something like that on my Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to play bass in the band?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, man." I was actually like in retirement, you know. I had sold like all my gear and everything, but yeah, I decided to jump back in because I was at the right point in my life, and yeah, it's been a wild ride so far.
Wow.
He came in a very interesting spot because we were in the middle of starting to record the album, and he really came in when we were ramping up everything. So it was definitely not a dull moment.
Yeah.
We bass, we ended up hiring a friend of mine from California. His name's Mike Mallory, that we hired to perform on the album, and he did a killer job.
Yeah. Definitely some awesome bass parts on the album.
And he's not even a metal bass player. He wasn't even really familiar with melodic death metal when I asked him to do it, and he really took to it. He's like, "I love this album."
I think we had to call him to turn the string down.
Yeah.
Lower the tuning.
No, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Wow. Very, very cool stuff. Now, I think that normally concludes the questions that I have. Kind of one of the other questions I was going to have is one of two things I'm seeing with the COVID year and the album being released in September is either that's the way it was always supposed to be or it's been pushed back. So my question is, how has this year then gone for you guys? Has it been a blessing in disguise? Has it allowed you to spend more time on other things? Has it not really changed anything, minus obviously not playing shows or doing any tours?
It's well, the album, I mean, technically speaking, the album has been over 4 years in the making. But starting from when I reformed the band last year, it was originally, my original release date was supposed to be October 2019. But we had some latecomers and some issues with some of the band members had some personal issues. So they weren't able to really kind of like sink their teeth into it that early. And then so I decided to push it off till May. It was May, beginning of May. And then as time went on, we weren't even going to get to start recording until February, late February. We were still, so late February. So then, because the big plan was to do the album, have it done by mid-April, and then do a 3-month PR campaign leading up to what we then again changed the release date to July 18th. And this is still before the COVID shutdown. And then COVID hit, and we kept that day in July, but by like May, we ultimately decided to keep the show if we are able to play it, but move the actual CD release until October, hoping that things would change. They still haven't. So even though the album's coming out, I'm like, look, it sucks, but I just want this fucking album out. I'm not pushing it off another year just because we can't play a CD release show. So we'll do a nice big CD release show next year. But it's COVID. So there were issues before COVID, but COVID has definitely put a big damper on things too, because we couldn't even practice for a couple months. Luckily, we were in the process of doing a lot of mixing and mastering. So technically we didn't need to practice, and obviously we weren't doing shows, but it still has caused a bunch of issues. So even like the show that we did have still booked from the previous year in July, got a little bit of backlash, even though they were practicing social distancing guidelines and limited capacity. There were a few people that spoke out against us on the social medias, and it was not fun. But I mean, it's like, the thing is, they were trying to spin it as basically, how dare you put people at risk? And like, our thought process was like, well, what about the people that want to go to a show? Nobody's been able to do anything for 4 months. And then the funny thing about one of the posts that I saw, though, was that he's like, unless you give all your proceeds to the venue, which we did, in fact, but he didn't try to check anything about what was going on before he decided to lambaste us on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you know you're making it, is once you have haters.
Yeah, right.
Get the spectrum.
This is very true. Now, something you mentioned was a CD release party. Some bands have done that online. Is that something you guys have considered doing, like a live stream that you could put up on YouTube or Facebook or wherever?
We've talked about it a little bit, just the logistics of it. Where we play, like where we practice, doesn't have internet available, and doing that over cellular just seems a little iffy. So we're figuring out if we want to record it and then, polish it and then release it, or if we do find somewhere to do it live, if maybe a venue wants to host us on their stage, even if the rest of the building's empty. So we're looking at that as an option too, but I want to do it right if we do something like that, because it's been just such a big project up to this point. Like, I don't want to set up an iPhone on a tripod in a corner and just hope that it sounds good,
Yeah. I think either way, we will still do like a full-on release. Like, we technically do have May 20th booked next year. Of course, it's arbitrary based on what happens in the world, but we would still like to have a big blowout show if possible, even if it's a double release and it's not till 2023, which is a tentative date for the third album.
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna be a long day.
Yeah, lots of songs.
Groovy, baby. All right, well, that concludes all of my questions, and I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on to the Ironclad podcast.
Thank you, and thanks again for having us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Thanks, man.